Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Women in Leadership Talk podcast. We are here today with Cecile Moulard. Cecile, nice to have you here with us. And I think you're calling in from Paris. So thanks for
Yes,
joining us today.
yes, I am. And as you can see, I'm a fierce yogini and a book lover. You can see my name.
Awesome.
This is who I am. Yes.
All right, fantastic. Well, we're thrilled to have you here today. And let me give the audience a little bit of background on you before we jump into our conversation and get to learn more about you and the books you love to read and the yogini that you love to do. So, Cecile is a French business executive who is currently the co-founder and CEO of Mixer. She's on a number of boards, and including things like Truffle Capital. Sorry, my voice is not quite back with me yet. And she also launched Amazon in France several years ago. She started her career at Decathlon International, where she was a member of the strategic committee. And she then moved to Adez Institute, and she has worked with a number of iconic brands. I know our conversation we had before, Cecile, was really interesting about how you brought Amazon to France and just the work that you put into it and being seen as the mother or grandmother of the internet.
Yes.
So I'm excited for us to get into all of this and let our audience have a sense of who you are. But before we go there, I also want to take a moment and thank our audience for joining us. We know you have a choice as to what podcast you listen to. And we love at Women in Leadership Talk bringing you amazing women like Cecile so that you can learn about their stories and the variety of businesses that these amazing women are creating in our world today. So, Cecile, let's jump in. Let's get into, let's start with Amazon and bringing that to France. Like, how did that even come to be?
Wow. So first of all, I'm lucky in life in general. Okay. And I found myself in this place and time where a company like Amazon was thinking about, should I buy a company that is already created and just buy the team and everything? Or should I start the company from scratch,
Mm.
find a few crazy French people that would do it for me? And I was there at the right time, in the right environment, because Amazon was not my first company in France involved in tech. So it was just an amazing luck, I think. And I feel that what I've learned through launching this company and working with someone like Jeff Bezos at the time was really a pivotal time for me.
Mm.
What I've learned from this experience is when we say take the client and walk backwards,
Mm.
really creating your company, looking at your client changes everything for me. And I thought I was very client focused at the time because I started a few other companies before that. And I felt that I was the perfect, client focused person. And when I started working with Amazon, I realized that I knew nothing about it and that I had to relearn and rethink. And it was so, so interesting. Honestly, I'm not sure if I was to be offered the same job today, I would do it.
Mm.
But, and just because of, culture issues, but it was just a blast for me. So I was very lucky. And in 1 year, we had to hire more than 300 people. It was crazy. It was really, really interesting.
Oh, I can only imagine. And so that brought you to the US, is that correct? So you've been in the US now about 10 years, living in
Yes,
California? Okay.
yes, exactly. Well, in the meantime, I did wrote a book and I did launched another company before coming to the US. but yes, this is pretty much what happened. Yes.
So no grass is growing under your feet. You went from Amazon to writing a book to starting another company. So now you have Mixer.
Yes.
So tell us about Mixer and how, like, I know you've had quite the intricate journey. You call it luck. I would say, maybe being in the right place at the right time. Yes, that probably is helpful, but it also requires brains and skill and hard work. And so you've been able to, not only with Amazon, but you've done that with a number of companies and a number of boards that you sit on.
Yeah.
But maybe just talk to us about Mixer and how that came to be.
So Mixer, what we do at Mixer is we are really focusing on how to create communities at work internally within organizations. And those communities are around interest or expertise. And it's really a totally different way to look at how we engage with each other, how we belong to an organization, how we decide to invest in trust and all that. And I want to explain how that came about, this idea. So I was on my first public company board, the first woman on that board. And it was really interesting because for the first time in my life, I felt like I didn't have a place. I shouldn't be there. And people around the table made me feel that I had nothing to bring. And that was kind of new for me. I always been this, just trying stuff, and it was always working, and it was I had so much fun doing it. Anyway, I get on that board and realize that I'm not enough. And I am starting to wonder, wow, if companies at this level, the board level, have an issue with including a woman, then they probably have a much bigger issue within the organization.
No kidding.
And so I started thinking about what is happening to me and how can I solve not only my problem, but maybe someone else, problem. And I realized that the biggest problem they had with me wasn't me. It was not about me. It was about the fact that they didn't know how to connect with me. They didn't know how to talk to me just because it was still very new at the time. Okay.
Right.
Now
Yeah.
you have more and more boards with women on the board, blah, blah. But at that time, it was still very new.
Right.
And so I realized that trust was the issue. And if I could solve that problem at that level and maybe find a way to solve it within the organization at every other level, then maybe we could really be the diversity and inclusion we're looking for. And so working on this idea of trust, I used what I know, which is technology, and find a way to solve that issue. And I realized that trust, in order to build trust in an organization, if you share an interest with someone, or if you share an expertise with someone, and you find a way to get together around it, and create community around it, then you start really connecting at a deeper level, and that is building trust. That's what we did. We actually raised money and created our platform that allows within organization everyone, employees, to create their own communities around an interest and or an expertise. And it's amazing, actually. It's amazing because it's a superpower that women have. Do you know that?
Yes.
Women are amazing at creating communities. And so suddenly you give them a tool and a space for them to create something that can become an asset to the organization. And it's a way to give people that not necessarily think from the top, but think from the center,
Mm-hmm.
they're leaders more than managers. You give them the ability to show up and create value for the organization in a totally different way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's what we're after that.
I love so many things of what you shared there because, when you were talking about being on this board and, you know, they didn't know how to talk to you and you were one of the only women at the time and recognizing that that was not about you is so important because so often we will internalize it and think, what's wrong with me
Yeah.
versus what's wrong with the situation. And so I love how you've taken that and said, how do I solve this on a much bigger scale? Because it is a very common problem, right? And so finding those connection points, those common interests or where there's overlap, like that is that power of the connection, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, like that's so awesome. And you've created a business from that.
Exactly. And what I can say is as soon as there were 3 women on the board, I was the only one at the time. But then probably about 6 months after, there was a new woman coming in and then a third woman. And that changes everything. It changed the whole dynamic at the board level, totally changed the dynamic. Even the subject we were talking about were different. It was just absolutely amazing to see that.
So how, like maybe just articulate that for our audience. Like, so you saw these differences, and as more women joined the board, how did it shift the level of conversation that was taking place?
So what was really interesting for me is that some subjects were not really important at the board level
Mm,
before having women around, and 2 subjects came where it started to be really discussed a lot more with women.
mhm,
Is how are the employee doing? Are they satisfied with the job? Are they engaged? So they were asking questions, and it was really funny to see that it was not a usual subject
mm,
for the people around the table. And the other thing was a different way. It's just a different way to ask questions, different way to. But you know what? The real new thing is that when board needs to have more women,
mm,
often what they do, they also invite people that are coming from different walk of life.
mm.
Before, it used to be mainly men with very similar background, coming
Yeah.
from finance and maybe a little bit of strategy. But that was the extent of it. And suddenly they wanted to have women. They are younger, 20 years, 30 years younger. They are coming from they're digital like me, yet they hired me because I was coming from the tech and the digital world. And then we had people coming from HR. They never had anyone from HR around the table before. So suddenly, because of the age difference, because of the different point of view we would bring to the table, the conversation totally changed
Mhm.
for the better. I'm telling you, it was really fascinating to see that. And I had this experience not in only one board. I had this experience in 2 or 3 big public boards.
Mm.
So it's really interesting.
Well, I love how you're describing that because those are some pretty big lessons to learn, right? That, when we have not just diversity with gender, but we have diversity of thought, of age, like it does allow you to have a much broader scope on how to actually even look at a business or look at a strategy. And when you have that broader perspective, you cover more ground, more territory, especially when you're thinking about who the end users are, right? So like I know when you're thinking about technology, like you have to look at such a broad audience because everybody is impacted by technology, right? But are there segments that then you're zeroing in on? And when you have all the same thinking, you can't you can't see beyond what's right in front of you. Um, what
Yeah.
about from a metrics or from a financial position? How did that shift that organization's end results by having more of a diverse board?
Well, because you don't necessarily talk about the same, it's not, you do talk about the same thing. You always have the, the what a board is for you. It's, I mean, it's not that totally different. I think what's happening is just the way to ask questions, um, the um, the courage in some ways. I found women very courageous. Not that men are not, but I found women especially courageous, and they're really asking the hard questions.
Mm,
They don't necessarily care about the consequences for themselves.
right.
Where they're focusing on is really trying to understand what's happening in the organization. And the other thing that they do a lot, I'm going to talk about my experience of it. Okay,
Yes, of course.
I'm not pretending that it's everywhere like that, but I do have quite an experience with boards, and women are working a lot on their board. They ask a lot more questions. They get more training. They ask for more training within the organization. They come in knowing that they don't know.
Mhm.
And it's very interesting. And we, in some ways, the work we do with Mixer by introducing communities within organization, it's really another way to engage and work and create and innovate, very
Mhm.
different from teams. Okay,
Mhm.
the way teams are operating is still very hierarchical. Okay,
Mm.
you have a team leader, and then you need some, very specific people around the table in order to achieve a task that they have. Okay, so it's very intentional, it's very organized, and the goal of a team is to finalize a task and implement, decide, and then implement something.
Mhm.
It's very structured. It gives structure to the organization, and this is great. We need that, and I think there's millions of tools in order to help those teams being efficient.
Right.
What's missing is what I think women are the most uh, obvious people that should bring that to the organization. It's aliveness. What's missing
Mm.
is, with teams and efficiency and productivity, what we get to is a dead organization where it's dry, it's lacking life.
Mhm.
So communities are kind of reintroducing some aliveness in the organization through communities built by employees
Mhm.
around something they like. There is no one has to be in those communities. They just come if they want. They create connection. They share experiences. It's really about caring and supporting, but it means also that you're a lot more able to innovate, co-create, co-design, because you're here because you want to be here.
Yes. Yes.
So it's a totally different energy.
Yeah. No,
And
that
what
makes total sense.
and that's why I think I love it so much. It's still something that companies have a hard time really investing in, just because they feel they're going to lose something, they're going to lose power. But for those who are really doing it, what they realize, that what they get from it is so much more precious and so much more valuable in the long run for the organization, that they need faith a little bit. But when they do it, wow, it's the value they're getting from it is just amazing. And the biggest value for me is resilience. In because the world we're in is quite it's interesting, but also overwhelming.
Yes, very complex.
The way we look at it at Mixer is you have the speed of change, which is the increasing complexity of technology. And that is going quicker and quicker. Speed of change is increasing, okay? And that means new competitors every day, new technology that can disrupt your business every day, etc. So that is going faster and faster, while the speed of trust, which is, as human, what is it that we need in order to be able to keep up with the speed of change. So the speed of trust is decreasing.
Yeah, it's true.
So what we're trying to do with our communities is help the trust going back up. No, it's probably never going to literally, be as quick as the speed of change, but we need to do something about it. Otherwise, we're all going to finish totally disengaged, totally burn out, totally. We need to do something about it. We need to change something in how we're dealing with work every day today.
No, you're so right. Well, and when you were just saying that, like what, even your visual when you were talking about, when you look at teams and there's like this hierarchy and structure, and that can also be stifling from a creative perspective, where when you are building communities of interest, it's like you're unleashing all of this super creative power within individuals to innovate, and like nothing, there's no box around it, right? It's like completely everything goes. And that becomes really important, to your point, especially as that acceleration of change is happening. And you need to find those common ground, that commonality where people, they know that you have something of interest with each other, which helps keep you focused on that co-creation aspect of things.
Yeah, and you said a very important word, the getting together, the collective. So what's happening with the productivity approach that we've been having for so many years, and the individualistic approach to it, we kind of lost the collective. What we call, you can call it belonging, you can call it, there's many ways to look at it. But belonging and the collective are two things that we need to reinvest. And in order to do that, we need to be very intentional. We lost it we didn't want to lose it, but we didn't value it before. So we didn't know what we were missing. And since the pandemic, and I think people are really starting to understand what they're missing now. They're missing this humanity piece,
wanting to belong.
exactly. And in the US, I don't know about Canada, but in the US, you have the Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy, who is extremely involved in recreating the collective. It's fascinating to see the work he's been doing. He's been working with organizations, big companies, creating a framework around how to recreate the collective.
Mm.
Now he's doing, as we speak, he's doing a tour of the big universities in the US, trying to share his feeling that loneliness is creating so much mental health issues to physical issues. So he's really attacking the problem by every way he can. He wrote this book and then went to the workplace, and now he's going to universities, and he's really focusing on how do we recreate meaningful connections between people.
Yeah.
And in the workplace, it becomes so important.
Yeah.
I was looking at the last research. You have 76% of employees in the US that have a mental health condition. I've never seen that.
True in Canada too.
It's crazy. It's just crazy.
Well, it is, and something you just hit on, I think that has been really sort of in our face now since we've gone through the pandemic. It's made us start to realize even more the importance of those connections. And you see it even in the workplace where, people want to have the flexibility of working from home, but the one thing they miss is the connection, right? And so it's how to be creative in expanding on those connections and making sure that you're finding your community, which is what Mixer does, right? Like find your community of interest, so that you have that place of belonging. And I agree. I think that mental health has been impacted not just in our young people, but in all ages and stages, because even our seniors were isolated during the pandemic, and so many of them have lost so much of those connections. Yeah.
And for your audience, I think one of the things that we all need to be really thinking about is when you look at what employees want going back to the office, you have a huge majority of women that do not want to stay either fully remote or hybrid, but like one day a week at the office. And it's a huge majority of them. And I totally understand that, especially when you have children at home. But I'm extremely anguished about the consequence of that in the long run, in terms of the ability for women to go up the ladder and get to where they should be. And so I again totally understand why they would feel that it's easier to do that, but they're going to pay a huge price for it. And I am really, really afraid that it's going to have a major impact on the ability for women to reach the management and C-level.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you on that. I mean, it certainly will have an impact, and you have to work that much harder if you're remote of staying visible, right? Because if you're out of sight, you're out of mind. And it's not just when they have children at home now, because we're in that sandwich generation. So it's taking care of our older parents, and and then sometimes it's still raising your kids. And the numbers are staggering at how many women in especially the more senior roles that are, they're not happening as much. And so I don't disagree with you, Cecile. I think that is it's a big risk, because we've worked so hard to move that needle for equality. And women have such an important role to play. And even what you just described, and on how you witness the conversations changing on the board when more women came on the boards, like that is true in all facets of business, like because we see things differently, we ask different questions, and not that one's right and one's wrong, but it's having more of that harmonized approach to power and to who's leading things. Yeah.
I totally agree. I think women tend to lead better, while male tend to be maybe better at managing, because that's, managing is really coming from here and leading is coming from your belly button, your center. And I don't want to do like, male, female, but there is something here. There is something here. And yeah, I think we need to be very, very intentional about that, and a personal choice of, staying home for the parents or the kids or whatever has an impact, and we need to know about it so that we can, if we make that decision, it needs to be a decision made with all the consequences of it.
Yes.
We need to be aware of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. Thank you. Thank you. So I'm going to switch gears on us a little bit just because I'm cognizant of our time, and you and I could spend hours talking about this. So what's your favorite book you have going on right now?
Oh, I'm reading a book from this woman who is both a futurologist and a game designer. And she wrote a book called Unimaginable. It's absolutely brilliant. And what she's offering is a framework to think about and work around the idea of the future of something. So she's actually working at the Institute for the Future, and she works on the future of fashion, future of work, future of AI, everything. But what's very interesting is this book is she's offering a framework for you to take home and really think about your own future and the future of your company and the future of anything. It's just this, it's brilliant.
Nice. I haven't heard of this. And do you remember the author's name?
Yes, her name, and let me check because I don't want to say something that is not exact. Jane, you should really buy it. That's for sure. Jane McGonigal, McGonigal. Imaginable. How to see the future coming and feel ready for anything.
Wow.
And again, I really encourage you to get that book, because it's what she's saying, and I tend to totally agree with that, is that if you are able to foresee your future, kind of touch it and be in it and live it, then it will be much easier to get there when it's going to happen.
Yes.
And she's mentioning one of the amazing research she made a few years before the pandemic, where they had like thousands of people involved in a research about a pandemic coming in. And brilliant. And what they found out is that all the people that were involved in the research itself said that when they had to go through the pandemic, it was much easier for them because they already worked the scenario.
Yes.
And I believe it's true. We can do it for everything, and so, yeah, it's fascinating.
That is fascinating. And so often we don't set those intentions for our future. We just let life go on, and we're in that autopilot, and you just go from one day to the next and not even thinking about what the future is. But you have the ability to design what it is you want for the future. And I would say you're a great testament to that, even when you're looking at what is the need in the workplace. And so you created Mixer. And so how do people find you, Cecile, if they want to talk to you about Mixer and what they, how to get their
I love
companies?
it.
Yeah, how do
So
they find you?
you can find us on www.mixer.net.
Okay.
And you can write to me at Cecile, CECILE.net, .mixer.net, at mixer.net. Yeah, I did it right.
That's okay. I have to do
It
that too.
took me a little bit of time. Sorry.
It's okay. No, it's fine.
Jet lag. Yes, and community is something serious, actually. And if you want to have a conversation with me about the power of community and how it could change a lot of things with at work, but I think being intentional. The good thing about what's happening with all the tech and Zoom and all that, you need to be super intentional. Suddenly, I have a conversation with you. I need to be careful with the light, and I want to look nice. I'm not usually do that. It's you become very intentional in everything you do. Community is a little bit like that. Suddenly you become very intentional in your willingness to create meaningful connections. And I love that.
So do I. So do I. And, a lot of people I heard through the pandemic, people saying, oh, one of the things I struggled with was my connections. And I have to say, to your point, I was very intentional and probably grew my network by double because I was intentional about the connections, the community. And it's up to you, right? To find those communities that you feel part of. And that's a good feeling. Like, to me, it's everything. So I love that. I love what you're doing. And I want to thank you for joining us today. This has been a great conversation. Thank you for what Mixer is doing. I happen to be a big fan. I think it's it's so important for all of us to expand our community and our connection. And sometimes you just got to put yourself out there a little bit. And I want to thank our audience. I want to thank you for being here today. Like I said, I know you have a choice as to who you listen to. So we're grateful that you're here. And if you're struggling to, really do networking and to make connections, you can go on Will Empowered's website. We offer an on-demand course that actually teaches you how to network. And so you can have a little combination of my work and Mixer's work. So Mixer help you build that stronger community. So Cecile, thank you again for being here today. And I want to wish you the best with Mixer. I think it's really important, the work that you're doing and helping companies unleash more of that creativity. Yeah. So thank you.
So much for having me. It was a
Yeah.
pleasure.
Great to have you here. Take care.